Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Podcast 83, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Again, today we are joined by our government affairs staff, Deena Bosworth, Madeline, Fata, Samantha, Gibson, giving another weekly update of what's going on with the legislature as we kind of get here almost halfway through June. We are seeing committees pick up a little bit more this week. Hopeful for budget passage soon. But first, Deena, let's talk a little bit about a bill that came up last week, House Bill 5203, that has to do with retiring hirees. Can you tell us a little bit more about that bill and what it does and where it's at?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. So, Representative Kelly Breen from Oakland County introduced the bill several months ago in the House Bill 5203, that would allow those counties that have their own retirement system, that are not a member of MERS, but have their own retirement system, to rehire sheriffs, people, law enforcement for the sheriff's department. And MAC was supportive of the endeavor at that time. For all those counties that are in the MERS system, they already have that ability. But it was those 13 counties that are not in that system that this would extend that ability to them. Well, that bill passed out of the House and was in Senate Local Government Committee last week. And we worked with the bill sponsor and the committee members to expand that a little bit, to allow those counties that would seek to rehire retired employees to also be able to hire people from different departments. So let's talk about, like the equalization department is an extremely difficult area to fill within the county government. And so there are situations where you've got experts who have retired and the county really needs to bring them back without any significant limitations on it. Now, this doesn't say that you are required to hire back retirees. This is just for those counties that want to rehire someone who's retired, allow them to still continue to get their retirement benefits, but then capitalize on those years of experience, that expertise, and help fill vacancies in your departments.
So just to reiterate again, where are these bills now?
The bills will be voted out of the Senate Local Government Committee this week. I anticipate them getting through the process before they break for summer. So it'll go to the Senate floor for a vote, then back to the House for a concurrence vote, and then should head to the governor's office.
Okay, great. Yeah, it sounds like gives another option to local units of government to hire folks in those difficult areas. Um, as you know, we've got a lot of vacancies. It kind of varies statewide, but there's some issues in you mentioned equalization, but also public safety is another area where we're seeing areas that it's tough to hire people. So this sounds like it gives an option for folks to hire back some good, well experienced people to kind of fill some of those roles, at least in the short term, if they need to. So thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, another package of bills that kind of has two competing versions, I guess you could say. There's the Senate package and the House package. It has to do with SOAR, SOAR, and I don't remember what the acronym is, but I know it deals with economic development. And we've seen a lot of these economic development packages passed varying degrees over the years that tend to be very focused on the business side of economic development, maybe not always comprehensive as far as the impact of these large economic development packages on locals. Well, SOAR kind of did address that at one point and kind of still does, I guess. But I don't know if it's Deena or Madeline or all three of you. Let's talk a little bit about where we're at with I guess, this budget year's economic development package.
Yeah, so SOAR stands for the Strategic Outreach and Attraction Reserve. And traditionally, the state of Michigan has used that fund to attract large scale businesses. So think of battery plants, think of Hemlock Semiconductor. But there's been a lot of criticism over the years about, not really investing in smaller businesses or really what is the return on those large scale investments. And so the legislature has taken sort of a two-prong approach. One, they've decided that they want to rename SOAR to the Make It in Michigan Fund, which is fantastic. So we're looking at talking specifically about Senate Bills 559 and 562. Now, last week, we heard testimony in the House Economic Development and Small Business Committee about these bills, along with the second prong, which Madeline's going to talk about, that has a lot to do with transit. And these bills included not only changing some of the criteria for the distribution of these economic development funds, but how you will qualify for it. They also created what they called the Michigan 360 program. And that Michigan 360 program would set aside millions of dollars out of this traditional SOAR fund to go to local units of government, nonprofit organizations, regional governments, economic development groups to really help with small business development, but also the infrastructure and the housing and public transit needs to support the community where these businesses are trying to be attracted to. Testimony was really very interesting because they talked about how we've lost many major projects across the state because we don't have the communities where these people want to live. You know, the strong walkable areas, good bike paths and sidewalks and public transit systems and housing and childcare, and how we can't just focus on attracting businesses here through incentives and corporate giveaway dollars, but we actually have to create a community where they want to be, where the talent that they need is going to be, where they're getting the education they need in order to provide good, employees for these companies to hire. Unfortunately, this week, the legislature, in a very unexpected move, decided to completely scrap the Michigan 360 program and not provide those funds to local units of government, education institutions, nonprofits, etc. Instead, now, Madeline, this is where I'm going to, kind of throw you under the bus, but no pun intended.
That was a great pun, actually.
That was kind of a
Really
fun
good,
pun.
really. And
Yeah.
it just came off the cuff too.
Yeah. So instead, they decided to what, Madeline?
Yes, so they scrapped Michigan 360, but they are moving forward with the Michigan Mobility Trust Fund. Local governments will be eligible for these funds, as will regional transit authorities and public transportation providers. And like Deena said, the idea here is that to attract talent, to attract businesses, you need functional transit networks. You need people to get to work. You need people to get to their childcare, things like that. So projects that will qualify for these funds are air, land, and sea. There was a specific question during committee about ferry systems. This money can go toward ferry systems. It can go toward more flights going to northern Michigan from lower Michigan. It can be for bus routes. It can go toward anything as long as economic development is demonstrated in the project. So initially, the amount that would be deposited into this fund was going to be $200 million per year for the next 10 years, a total of $2 billion. But Deena, do you know if that move in committee this morning altered those figures at all? Yeah, I'm not sure if that
I do
changes the
not know.
distribution, but 2 billion is a whole heck of a lot. If there's any more, I mean, that would be amazing.
That is how many years did you say that 2 billion is over? How many years?
10.
And so and this is not a budget bill, correct? This is a separate policy bill that's saying 200 million over the next 10 years.
Yep. These are policy bills.
Yeah, this money is all just sitting in that account. I mean, they have made significant investments out of this fund for many years, but they've also recouped a lot of money into this fund, and so it is there and it is available for distribution. It's not rolling over into the general fund. They want to use it strictly for economic development. So it's not anything that I believe has to be appropriated at this point.
Interesting. So it's essentially a carve out of the SOAR fund for transit. And can any entity, I don't know if you guys know the answer to this, apply for, are these going to be grants or something for like the examples that Madeline talked about for, increased buses, ferries, air support?
It can be grants, loans, gifts. It can be in a lot of different forms. But yes, local governments can apply, regional transit authorities can apply, and public transportation providers can apply.
Interesting. And then so
So
the rest, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was just gonna clarify that the Senate bills are, were voted out of, the House Economic Development and Small Business Committee and now go to the House floor, back to the Senate for a concurrence vote. The House bills are just starting their process. So the transit bills that Madeline was talking about, the mobility fund, is just starting their process through the legislature. So it might be a little bit longer, and I'm not sure if they're gonna get to the governor at the same time or what that's gonna look like.
So two separate packages of bills that are doing different things, but out of the same fund?
They are tie barred, all 5 bills. So the Mobility Trust Fund bills are House Bills 57, 68, 69, and 70. And they are tie barred with those 2 Senate bills. All 5 are tie barred together.
But all at different stages of the process, some
Yes.
further along than others. Okay.
Yes.
So interesting. Could, speculating here or asking you guys to speculate, could these potentially hold up any sort of budget passage at any point as we are looking to get the budget done by, the artificial deadline of July 1st?
Anything can hold up the budget. But this being such a large economic development package, I'm pretty sure people are gonna hold out votes for the pieces and parts of it that they want in order to vote for the budget to get it done.
There
So
was
I wouldn't be
actually
surprised.
there was a very interesting moment in committee where a representative actually testified against the package as a whole. So you've already got one no vote in the House.
Yes, when you start getting into these dedicated funds, and and they can go to different areas, yeah, you definitely get people positioning themselves for these funds to go to their districts, I guess is the best way to say it, huh? All right. Moving along, another piece of legislation that is relatively new, I believe, at least we haven't talked about it before, or at least in a while. Juror compensation. Sam, I believe you're going to kind of give us an update there.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And you're right, we have not discussed these bills on this package yet. So a while back, a jury reform task force met. They came up with a set of policy recommendations. It's my understanding that this is not the first iteration of these recommendations in legislation. So month or so ago, Representative O'Neill introduced this package. It's House Bills 5689 through 5693. They do a wide variety of things to reform the jury process, but most importantly to counties is the bills would increase the hourly rate that you would receive as a juror, and it ties it to minimum wage. That in and of itself, not an issue. The issue lies in what's called the Juror Compensation Fund. That is quickly dwindling. Year after year, the amount in that fund drastically decreases. So when you have an ever decreasing pot of money and an attempt to increase the hourly rate that jurors are receiving, it begs the question, who is then responsible for making up the difference? Now, the legislation does not outline who would be responsible. And my goal is to ensure that that responsibility does not fall onto the county. We've had great conversations so far with the bill sponsor. There's no real sense of urgency on moving this package before the summer, but just so, commissioners and administrators are aware, this is incredibly important, and the cost to counties could be significant if the responsibility were to fall on, the county to fill that.
So how is that jurors compensation fund funded now? I'm assuming through some sort of court fees or something like that, or?
Yeah, and the amount, like I said, that goes into it
Yeah.
is decreasing. Now, my understanding is there's nothing in statute that says that that fund can't go down to zero. So that's also a piece of this conversation is, do we fix that and ensure that it can never be zero? How do we alleviate the fact that it's decreasing? And, you know, the county can't decide how many jurors there are, right? I mean, they could call in however many people they'd like for jury duty, and everyone has to get paid for their time, regardless of how long they're there or whether you actually serve on a jury. So again, great conversations with the bill sponsor. There's a question as to whether or not the responsibility being on the county is even constitutional. Is it a Headley violation to do this? So I think we'll make great strides in this. We're grouping the package over the summer, but want to bring this to everyone's attention before it inevitably comes up in the fall.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the update. And then finally, any update on the budget? We talked about it briefly. Deena, anything that we want to talk about? Any changes? We obviously the revenue sharing component we've talked about a lot. Anything in the past week or so that we want to update everyone on?
Unfortunately not. And that's, I mean, I think that just our members need to be aware that we're still waiting to hear, when the members get their specific targets and then what that's gonna look like in the next couple of weeks, but we're still on hold.
No conference committees have been assigned or anything like that. Have they gotten targets?
Conferees have been assigned, but no conference committees have been scheduled. I think it's gonna take a little while, once they get their targets, to be able to negotiate out what that conference report final budget is gonna look like. So
Okay,
still waiting.
great. Thanks. Anything that I missed that you guys wanted to bring up? All right, well, great. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Of course, we have our policy summit coming up here at the end of June. It'll be on Tuesday, June 25th, here in Lansing. Registration, I believe, is still open. There is a virtual option, so you can attend virtually, but please check that out. We'd love to see you there. And then we'll have our annual conference coming up here in September, and registration will open for that soon as well. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.